Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Postpoint Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking politics. We got Matt here. What side are you on?
On the right?
I was just sitting on the left side of the table.
Oh, that's interesting. Ironic.
All right, and then...
I guess I'm the left.
You're the left.
All right, and we're talking about fake news today. So we'll start off with you, Matt. Start off your kind of position.
My position is that there's a lot of fake news out there. I personally am very particular about where I get my news, what I believe in, and it takes me a while to form an opinion. But I have an open mind to every side, and I understand the opposition side, the left side as well, and that helps me to strengthen my own opinions. But
all right.
I like to think that there's still a moral backbone in news. I do know that some news is fabricated, and you need to be mindful of where you get your news from and where the facts are coming from. But yeah, I just like to think that there's still like a moral integrity.
I like to think that too.
Alrighty, and what kind of instance would you like to bring up for example of your position on fake news?
An example of my position on fake news would be, for example, the whole Jussie Smollett story that broke last year that all of the mainstream media ran with. MSNBC, CNN, they all ran with the story before the facts came out and misled and deceived a lot of the population. And that's really damaging, in my opinion, to our American community, because a lot of people fell for that story and a lot of people probably still believe it. But in hindsight, it was a really damaging situation, and it was a lot of lies that were introduced and brought out for people, and I think that the facts need to be straight before they really start pushing something, of that caliber onto the public. So,
I personally think that the term fake news is overused a lot, and it's kind of just like a lot of politicians' way of, if something bad comes out about them, they can just go, oh, well, that's fake news, like it didn't happen, then I don't have to answer for whatever they said because it's not real.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that.
I just think that it's kind of used as a calling card of, oh, well, it's not even real, so I don't have to answer for whatever they said because I'm just going to claim that it's not real.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I think that that's absolutely something that does happen, or a way that fake news can be used to defend yourself. But I think that a lot of times it's true also that a lot of people are lied about, and there's a lot of examples of individuals in today's political climate that are constantly lied about. In my opinion, the president is lied about every single day, probably the most lied about man in America, and I think that that it's hard to witness because a lot of people buy into the deception, and then they choose to side with whatever seems popular, whatever's pop culture, social media, this and that. So then celebrities come out and they believe the fake news, and then they say their opinion, and then people side with their celebrities, the stars, whatever. So I think that fake news can be dangerous because it manipulates people, and it takes advantage of their own lack of knowledge. So my advice to anyone would be to not just go CNN, not just go Fox News, not just go MSNBC, not just go mainstream media as a whole, cable news, but do your own research online. Find the facts for yourselves and really look out for bias, because it's really not too hard, for me at least, to spot. So just keep your head in a swivel as far as news goes.
Yeah, I agree with the CNN and Fox News because they're both obviously biased towards two different ends of the spectrum. And I think that getting your news from not just one place that claims to be unbiased, but multiple places across the board, even if you look in two separate places that are biased for different reasons, just making sure that you're not just intaking information from one person and just kind of adopting their ideals.
I agree with that, actually. That was what I was going to say next, is it's okay if you tune into Fox News or you tune into CNN, but you shouldn't just, only watch one or the other, because then their opinion, becomes your opinion. They indoctrinate you into accepting that worldview, when there is a worldview that's reality that you have to find for yourself, but you're going to get a bias from each side, so you're not going to get the real, actual situation at large if you're getting it from biased sources. So it is important to seek out unbiased sources. And if you have opinions that you agree with, like, for example, Fox News would be more right-leaning, and you tend to be more right-leaning, then I understand why you'd want to gravitate there to see your opinions, you know. But at the same time, it is important to get facts from elsewhere, too, so that way you know the actual scope of the situation and the reality, so.
Something I want to bring up and backtrack to is the Trump being misrepresented in media is so something that kind of surprised me in the 2016 election is how many red states there were with all like the hate towards Trump. How prevalent do you think it is for fake news for people to actually buy into it? It seemed like a lot of the major cities like California, New York, and even Washington ourselves were within the blue states. Like, do you think it just is more of like wherever there's more of a population, that's where more of the fake news is believed, or do you think it's like a lot of people can catch on to it?
So the mainstream media, this is another example of fake news, was pushing the narrative that Hillary Clinton had I saw 96% chance to win in the polls. That's what they were saying ahead of time. So I was seeing memes online from left-leaning friends of mine on Facebook, Instagram, etc., all saying, you know, just pretty much being really, really arrogant, really overconfident that they were going to win, that their candidate was going to win, and then, you know, pushing really anti-Trump stuff, and then pushing, I saw one meme that was like, oh, even when Trump loses tomorrow, which it was the day before the election, even when Trump loses tomorrow, the hate, whatever, is going to be prevalent in the nation for years to come, whatever. So they were already assuming a day in advance that he was going to lose because the polls and the fake news were pushing that he was going to lose, when in reality, he had more momentum, and he was like, an average Hillary Clinton rally was like 300 people. An average Trump rally was like 20,000. He was literally filling sports stadiums, and he's doing that even more so now. But they're pushing all these fake polls. So, and then then they ran with the story after he won. Oh, but he lost the popular vote and all this stuff. Well, there's a lot of weird stuff there too. But I'll just concede he did lose the popular vote. But that's the purpose of the Electoral College, so that 3 cities like, you know, Chicago, New York, and LA. Because if you look at the election map, Trump won 95% or like 90% of the counties. So if you look at the election map, it's like almost all red in the counties, but then individual states like were blue, like Washington, California. So that's the purpose of the electoral college, so that 3 cities like Chicago, New York, and LA don't determine the fate of 96% of the country.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with. I was really confused when the whole Hillary Clinton was gonna win and then she didn't win. It was really confusing, and I was just kind of wondering how that could have gone so wrong. I mean, I didn't want Hillary to win either. I didn't want Trump or Hillary. I'm more of a middle of, I hated both of them. But yeah, a lot of my friends who supported Hillary did the same thing, where they posted memes the day before, and then Trump won and they freaked out. And
That's what they do.
I don't know how that went so wrong. I just can't tell if, they were just really bad at
It's fake news,
polling.
fake polls. It's fake news, fake polls. They push the polls because then it discourages right-wing people from going out and going to the voting box if they think that they have no chance to win. Because people think that their vote doesn't matter when it does matter. Because if you look at the counties, once again, the counties were, very red. Washington State is red all the way throughout, the state until you get to Pierce County, King County, all these ones right here in Seattle, where all the population is. But all the people in the counties are, living in the real world, to some degree, and people here in the cities do too. But we struggle more in the cities, higher taxes, things like that. People in the real world don't want to struggle. They don't want to have what we have here. We have high taxes. We have 10% tax. So for every dollar you spend, sales tax, every dollar you spend, you're actually throwing a dime in there too. So $10, you spend another $1. So it's ridiculous taxes. But people that are outside of that aren't, struggling with that same situation, don't want that. So they oppose it. So that's why most of Washington State, as an example, is actually red. It's just these small pockets in Seattle and Tacoma and these inner cities where it's blue. Same goes nationwide for other states. So yeah, so it's just fake polling and then the fake news pushing the fake polls. So there really is a fake news problem, and countries around the world always. For example, President Trump was saying this recently, that he talks to world leaders, and the world leaders asking, why does the mainstream media hate Americans so much? And I think that's a good question and a powerful question that they ask. So.
Another question to bring up is, we kind of live in a day and age right now where anybody can start their own blog and people can start following it and take that as their source of news. How do you think people could really educate themselves on like what can be reliable and what can't? And especially in today's climate where like pretty much anybody can start their own type of news outlet.
That's very true. I think a lot of times people that start their own, like in their own kitchen, that are, starting their own news, things like that, they're more trustworthy than the mainstream corporate media because they don't have, millionaire/billionaire donors giving them a bunch of money. They're just doing it because they have a passion for it. And they might not always be right. They might be wrong. Everyone's wrong. So I don't fault CNN, even though I don't tend to be a fan of CNN. I don't fault them for being wrong on occasion. But when it's consistent and it's something that looks like it's agenda driven, then it looks to me like it's, intentional deception, and that I don't like. And then in light of the recent, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Project Veritas, but it's like a small investigative journalist team that goes in and infiltrates different organizations. They've done different ones, but they just recently did a CNN one where they pretty much just blew the whistle on how CNN has a huge anti-conservative, anti-Trump bias, and how they're pretty much the CEO of CNN, Jeff Zucker, has a huge bias and a huge disdain for Trump that goes back many years. So he's always telling them, like, good coverage of this, but get back to impeachment, get back to this, cover these stories, because he has his own agenda that he wants his journalists to push. So even journalists within CNN, there's good ones there that don't want to have this, big agenda thing, that don't want to have this crazy bias. They care about their own credibility, but they have to answer from the people above them. So they have to do those things. So it's not always the fault of, an entire organization. But anyways.
So do you think that, everything that's been said about Trump is a lie?
No, I think there's fair criticism, and I think it's the job of media to keep each branch in check. But I don't know if you noticed, it's always Trump. It's always as negative. And I believe that's because he's like a duly elected president that wasn't supposed to win. So I think that it was like the fake news, the fake polls, they were pushing were to get Hillary Clinton into office. When that didn't happen, then it was, okay, now we have a citizen that's a president, a billionaire citizen that's a president. It's not going to be business as usual. This is something different. This isn't an elite politician that we're used to having run the country. So the fake news media, it's all corporate media. So they're just getting, a bunch of donors. That's why every other commercial is a pharmaceutical ad. All these things is because the big pharmaceutical companies really, have a lot of say and a lot of funding that they provide these news agencies. So they have to push that agenda as well. And so I do think that there is fair criticisms of Trump, to answer your question. And I think that I don't think he's perfect. I don't think anyone's perfect. I've had my own disagreements with the decisions he's made, including years back when he attacked Syria with those 7 cruise missiles, and blew up one of their air bases or whatever. I disagreed with that because I'm anti-war. I'm opposed to war in the Middle East. I think that every time we do something like that, it never ends well because they have to figure it out on their own. I'm not an empire. I don't want America to be an empire. I want us to go back to our roots, like prior to World War II, where we're kind of isolationists, just focused on making our country great. And that's why I voted for a president that who had the slogan "Make America Great Again," because I want to see this country go back to the days when it was, on top of the world. And it still is, but it's a lot weaker, and it's getting better now from these last few years under President Trump, in my opinion. So I think that it's a difficult road to go from, being in a really debt-ridden spot where our country is, going downhill, and then we have a superpower like China that's constantly raising GDP 10% every year for 60 years. So they were bound to catch us, and now we just had this recent deal where America is going to be on top, and we're going to be on top for a long time. And that's what I want to see. I want to see my fellow Americans, the people that I actually know, that I see every day, I want to see them succeed. I don't know. I want the rest of the world to succeed too, but they got to do that on their own. We can't be the world's policeman anymore.
I agree that there are some problems in the media, but I usually think that if you're trying to avoid bias, personally, best way to do it is to read the news, because I think it's a lot easier to not take bias when you're reading the news, because it's a lot easier to spot, and you're not listening to somebody's inflection that implies like a double meaning. I don't know. But
I agree. And a good smile can convince you of anything, too.
True.
A lot of, good-looking people, that's why they put, such great-looking people on the pedestal. No, it's true, though.
It's true.
In the position of the reporter, the person actually on the television screen, a good smile and, and a good personality. Like, I think Obama had a great personality. That's why he had so many fans. You know what I mean? But that's not always what we need, though, a good smile, a good personality. We need someone that's going to make hard decisions, hard calls. And anyways, but yeah, so going back, I agree with you on that it is sometimes hard to if there's someone you like and you see them saying things, then you just tend to agree with them. So yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. I know you got to go soon. Do you guys want to say anything to conclude? Just any final last thoughts?
That was kind of your conclusion.
That was my conclusion. Yeah.
Okay, so I would just say I agree with her. Definitely do your own research. Don't take my word for anything. Don't take her word for anything. Do your own research. Really just realize that you're not getting the full picture from any of these cable news. Going from Fox News, I'm right-leaning. Fox News is right-leaning. But you're not getting, the full picture. You're getting half the picture from Fox News, also from CNN, MSNBC. So make sure that you are getting the correct worldview by doing your own research and discovering what is reality for yourself.
All right. All right, guys, thank you for watching this episode of Post Point Podcast, and join us next week. And if you like this type of content, just let us know, and we can maybe do more.